So I mentioned a few days ago that I was coming up on 100 pounds since I started this back in September. And I wanted to spend some time doing a little bit of reflection on this whole diet thing. Diets have kind of been a part of my life almost since childhood, really. When I was 7 years old, 1979, 1980, my parents put me on my first diet. They had bought a copy of the book, The Scarsdale Diet, and decided that a 7-year-old could get by on 700 calories a day. Scarsdale didn't last that long. I found all sorts of ways to sabotage it. It didn't help my family's efforts that there was a convenience store not far away from our house. So up in Michigan we had the bottle return law. I would grab some bottles, take them up to the stop and go, and there I was. I could pretty much get whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. When I was 8, and I was in 3rd grade, my mother made another attempt at putting me on a diet. My teacher, Mrs. Olson, took me into the pod in our classroom. My elementary school was one of these built in the late 60s, early 70s under the module and pod method, and what you would have is 4 classrooms strategically located around a central area. Well, at the forward end of that central area, there was this little storage closet where they would keep curricular materials, and for some reason there happened to be a medical scale in there. And she brought me in. I don't know why. I don't remember what prompted it. She took me in. She put me on it. She weighed me. And I remember the number, 91 pounds. 8 years old, 91 pounds. The next thing I knew, she called my mother, and my mother put me on this funky diet of pineapple, shrimp, and carrots. That was pretty much all that I ate for several months, at least when I was with her, when I wasn't visiting my father. And I remember at some point in time in the year, I had lost 10 pounds, and I had gotten down to 81 pounds, and again, things kind of bounced. No diet lasts forever. Nobody was teaching me how to eat. They were just putting me on these diets, and as soon as I stopped the diet, the weight came back on. Elementary school got really interesting in 4th grade when my grandmother decided to make some extra money and become a saleswoman for Cambridge Diet. Cambridge Diet was an old powdered diet. It was probably one of the first liquid diets that really became popular in the United States. I did some web research on it, actually, and from what I see, Cambridge is still going strong in Europe. I haven't seen it in the U.S. for a long, long time, but Gran was a distributor of it, which meant that everybody in the family was doing Cambridge at one point in time, or at least everybody in the family was buying Cambridge, and because I happened to be the fat kid in my generational cohort, I was the one who was put on Cambridge. That was literally 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. Every summer. Summer of 4th grade, summer of 5th grade, summer of 6th grade, when I would go to live with my father, within that first week, there would be canisters of Cambridge, and my grandmother would come in and she would coach me on, here's how you make the shake, and here's how you can eat with it, and here's how the diet works. And look, if you've ever been on a liquid diet, for people who bitch about Slim Fast, believe me, Slim Fast is like creme brulee compared to Cambridge. Cambridge was colored, chalky goat piss. The fact that I even went on it for a week or 2 or 3 before breaking down says a lot about my ability to at least want to try and succeed on these diets. And the fact that it was kind of a family business, that everybody was buying it to support my grandmother, meant that I couldn't get away from it. I can remember going up to my aunt and uncle's cottage in Charlevoix each summer. We would have a 4th of July gathering, and there would be two tables. There would be the table with the real food, with the burgers, with the chips, with the desserts, and all the... Then there would be the Cambridge table. The table that a couple of the relatives, the aunts, my Aunt Sue and Aunt Pam in particular, they would make these Cambridge style desserts, and I was kind of strongly pushed to the Cambridge side of the gathering. And of course, if you take a 10-year-old and you say, okay, here's a cheeseburger, here's a can of Cambridge, go mix yourself a shake, the answer is pretty much a no-brainer. So the Cambridge thing, I mean, Gran was selling it until I was into high school, but by 6th grade I was done with it. Cambridge just wasn't happening for me. 7th grade. In the spring of 7th grade in particular, my father tried this plan where he took me, there was this little mall place, it was called Diet Center, Grand Blanc, Michigan, in the Bella Vista Mall, now the Grand Mall. And it was kind of a daily program. You would have to go in each day, you would check in with the counselor, what are you eating, what did you eat yesterday, what did you intend to eat yesterday, did you eat it yesterday, let's look at today. 5 days a week for about 2 months I did this. And again, the Diet Center thing, you're dealing with a kid here. Wasn't working for me. Diet Center didn't last very long. And that takes us into 8th grade. I can remember winter of 8th grade. This must have been January, February of 1986. My father saw this hospital program advertised in the newspaper, and they gave us this little workbook. Once a week we would go in and we would do exercises in the workbook. We would talk a little bit about eating, a little bit about the diet, and then we would exercise in the hospital. This is a freaking hospital. They've got us climbing stairs, and apparently climbing stairs is supposed to be fun for a bunch of middle school and elementary schoolers. The hospital program was it was a defined thing. It was, I think, a 10-week program. Didn't really work, but that seeded an idea in my father's mind for what was kind of one of his, I guess you would say, the final push to try and get my weight under control. In the summer of 1986, I was sent off to the Fat Farm. Weight Watchers ran this series of summer camps located across the United States, and they happened to have one in Tampa in the Vanguard School, which, as far as I know, is actually still operating. It's a residential school, I guess a private boarding school. I went off to Camp Vanguard for 2 weeks, and again, it was a Weight Watchers camp. I was put on the Weight Watchers program, and it was actually working for me when I was on the diet. But again, I left the camp. I followed the diet that summer, but as soon as I got back home to Michigan, I fell off the diet, and things kind of quickly fell apart. This situation got really complicated when I was in high school, because in 10th grade I went to a private school myself, the Valley School in Flint, Michigan. And Valley was kind of this unique school. You're talking, I graduated in a class of 17 seniors, and at that point in time, class of 1990, we were the biggest. Valley typically graduates anywhere from maybe 8 to 12 at a whack. So they didn't have a cafeteria. You had one of two choices. You either brought your lunch, or you went out to one of the plethora of fast food places in Grand Blanc, and you brought the fast food in. Well, guess what I chose? So my high school was fast food every day, 5 days a week, plus maybe eating out once, twice, 3 times a week for dinner, just depending on how busy my father was. So when I was in high school, I kept going on this plan of going on diets, going off diets, and eventually by the time I was in high school, I had kind of given up and just fallen into wherever things were going to take me.